You ever stop to think that the world we see all around us was shaped by another world, one that was built to stay completely hidden, a secret world of concrete and steel, born from a fear that pretty much defined an entire generation. And this whole story? Well, it doesn't start with a sight. It starts with a sound.
For more than a decade, you had ham radio operators, pilots, even top-level intelligence agencies, all being driven kind of crazy by this single strange sound. It just appeared on the airwaves, no explanation. So they gave it a nickname, the Russian Woodpecker. But what on earth was it?
I mean, just imagine you're spinning a radio dial and you hear that. A really sharp, constant tapping sound, 10 times every single second. It was so powerful it was messing with actual broadcasts, air traffic control, communications all over the planet. It was like a ghost in the machine, and for the longest time, nobody had a clue what was making it.
Well, eventually the mystery was solved. The sound was coming from this thing, the Duga radar. It was a top-secret Soviet facility built for one absolutely terrifying reason, to give Moscow just a few minutes of warning that nuclear missiles were on their way from America. This was, quite literally, the tripwire for World War III.
And, saying this thing was big is a serious understatement. The main antenna structure stood 150 meters tall. To put that in perspective, that is almost as tall as the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was an absolute monster from the Cold War.
And a monster like that has a monstrous appetite. The Duga radar needed a staggering 10 megawatts of power just to run. So where do you find that kind of juice in the middle of nowhere? Well, the Soviets had a pretty simple, if kind of chilling, solution. You build it right next door to the brand new Chernobyl nuclear power plant.
The price tag was just as hard to wrap your head around. Some sources estimate the whole project cost around 7 billion Soviet rubles. Now, in an economy that was already stretched pretty thin, that is a truly unbelievable amount of money.
And if you really want to put that 7 billion rubles in perspective, just look at this. It was double the cost of the entire Chernobyl nuclear plant that was built to power it. So the Soviets spent twice as much on the alarm system as they did on the thing providing the power. That tells you absolutely everything you need to know about their priorities back then.
Right, so that begs the question, why? Why this gigantic expense? Why build these massive technological titans? To get that, we have to remember the world they were built for. For decades, civilization was basically living on a knife's edge, under the constant, terrifying threat of nuclear war.
And this wasn't just some vague anxiety. No, it was punctuated by these incredibly tense moments where things almost went wrong. From the Berlin blockade to the Cuban Missile Crisis, the entire world was just holding its breath. And it was in this climate of insane anxiety, from about 1950 to 1970, that a silent, frantic, and totally secret construction boom was happening. A story that's way bigger than just one radar array.
Okay, so the Duga radar, as huge as it was, you could see it. But this fear of total annihilation? It wasn't just a Soviet thing. Over in the West, the response was a lot quieter, it went deeper, and it was hidden right under everyone's feet.
So now we're shifting from these structures that reached for the sky to a whole secret world that burrowed deep into the earth. And while the Duga was this kind of public mystery, this next part of the story was a secret that was deliberately kept from the public.
The sheer scale of this hidden world was incredible. Across Britain, it's estimated that over 1,500 nuclear bunkers were built. More than 200 of those were in Scotland alone. This was a vast underground network designed for one purpose: to make sure the government could keep running even after a nuclear strike.
But this secret architecture, it came with a secret cost. And it wasn't a cost you could measure in rubles. It was measured in the homes, the schools, and the hospitals that didn't get built for a nation that was still recovering from war.
So what this created was a direct conflict, a hidden battle for the country's future. On one side, you have the government's top-secret defense projects, and on the other, you have this desperate public need for post-war rebuilding. And this wasn't a matter of let's do both. It was a zero-sum game.
And why was it a zero-sum game? Because both sides were fighting for the exact same critically limited resources. The same money from the treasury, the same concrete and steel, and, maybe most importantly, the same architects, engineers, and builders that were needed to rebuild the country.
This quote from the source thesis just lays the consequences out plain and simple. Every single ton of concrete that got poured into a secret bunker was a ton that couldn't be used for a new hospital.
Every architect assigned to a top-secret facility was one less person designing new housing. Civilian needs were, and I'm quoting here, delayed, significantly altered, or canceled entirely.
So the Cold War eventually ended. The threat faded away, and all of these secret concrete worlds were suddenly just relics. Relics of a future that, thankfully, never happened. So what became of them?
Well, their afterlives have been all over the place. Most were just decommissioned, all the secret stuff was stripped out, and then they were either sold off, torn down, or just locked up and left to decay. But some of them have found these bizarre new uses, from museums that preserve their creepy history to ultra-secure data centers, and yeah, in at least one case, a nightclub.
And that brings us right back to where we started this whole story. The Duga radar, the infamous Russian Woodpecker. It never detected a single incoming missile. It was silenced for good by the Chernobyl disaster, its entire purpose made obsolete by history. And now it just stands there, this bizarre, rusting tourist attraction, a monument to a war that was never actually fought.
Which leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to think about. This entire hidden world, the radars, the bunkers, all of it, was built at an almost unimaginable cost, both in money and in what society had to give up. So was it all just a colossal failure, a massive waste? Or was this unseen, unacknowledged architecture the very thing that kept the peace? Was it the silent scaffolding that actually ensured our survival?